Welcome back to a big old day in the world's messiest garage with the Cuda. You can see I've got the tail pan taken back off, and what I'm starting to work with is trunk drop-offs. Woo! Yay, trunk drop-offs. I thought we'd talk about those because this is where you start dealing with those fitment issues that we've talked about in the past. And you can see on this one, down in that corner, there's some daylight showing through. All right, that all looks pretty good as far as the fit goes. I'm not sure about the cross member extensions and how those are gonna look once it's all said and done with. But then the other thing I'm dealing with is this disparity between the kick up at the back. Now notice the edge in the front is, I think, where you'd want it to go. Of course, I don't have a ton to go off of. So how am I gonna handle this? Well, I'm gonna go do some reading on it, of course. And then if I have to, I will straighten that flange out, whichever one is off, and that will, you know, I'll be able to tell once I get the tail pan sitting in here. Other things I've been doing that I probably hadn't told you much about is getting these frame rails cut out. You can see this one is pretty much gone, except for the very, and it's really, let's see if I can, no, that's as much as it's gonna zoom in. It's just the very front of the rail where it's up under the floor pan, that's hard to get to. And then I'm pretty close on this side. So getting there. Of course, all of this has been taken off. Up here, you can see I've got some silver vis-a-vis marker, or whatever those things are called, to be able to have a starting point to where to put the new cross members. I mean the new rails. And then my new rails are sitting over there in the plastic with all the other junk in the garage. So other things, you know, purists may hate me for this kind of thing, but I'm just going to talk about these trunk drop-offs. These are how you buy them. A fairly good quality product. This is just the CHL Goodmark / whoever else goes off of their stampings. And here's how I'm handling some of the fitment issues. You may like it, may not like it. When it comes from the factory, you can see the two spot welds. Let's see if I can get a better picture of it. The two spot welds that are right here. Well, if the bends were perfect and everything, that would be just fantastic. But at least in my case, and probably in yours too, you're going to have to do some fitting. So making a few little either pie cuts or just cuts to be able to do some bending with these things, and then using some of the longer snout pliers so you can actually grab all the way back to the bend line there before you do anything. But I decided to cut it here at the little notch, be able to do some fitting there. I cut right inside where the flange is. I'll leave there factory spot welds, and then where I get it where I want it, I'll weld it back up. You saw that one inside, I told you it had some daylight in it. Yeah, I cut a little bit too much out right here. I'll weld it up. Will it be perfectly beautiful? Nah, probably not, but it'll be okay. And then I also cut here because this corner, I mean, you can see in the light, yeah, it kind of dogs out there some, which is probably not correct. I mean, I really don't notice that in my quarter panel. So that should be fairly flat right there. I may have to do a little work. And then this edge actually goes too far up and it hits the outer wheel housing. Now, I had to replace the outer wheel housing, so are the wheel housing dimensions, the shape of it, are they correct? Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's the wheel housings or the trunk drop-offs, but you know, if you're gonna mess with these old cars, you've got to be able to do a little bit of body work to get this kind of stuff to fit. What I did in the back of this one is I went ahead and put the fender where it would go, and then you can see I made some marks there where kind of the fender outline was, and I just couldn't leave all the metal that was going to be there. It wouldn't fit. If it did, it would have had to been bent in about 5 different directions. So I did a little cutting and bending to make it look as good as I could, and then did that cut. Like I said, this cut's got a little more daylight in it than I would like to see, and it's because I pie cut it instead of straight cut it. So lesson learned on the one down there, just do a straight cut, not a pie cut, and then I'll trim off the extra. The fitting itself, you know, you got this seam along here, and it fits where it fits. I mean, there's no really, oh, I could do that a little bit different. And then along the back, you've got these overlapping tabs that go on the back of it. What I'd like to see is, man, I'd love to see these perfectly even, but if I do that, it's actually going to pull it away from the wheel well. I could pull it away from the wheel well some, and then I'd have to bend the lower flanges on the front of the trunk drop off and on the wheel well. So you just got to figure out what you want to do and how to make this work. And sometimes it's about your ingenuity and creativeness when it comes to some of these things. If you want a perfect Mopar, die and go to heaven, man. All these cars were smashed on. They may not even been clamped right at the factory. You never know what you're getting. So do the best you can and have a great time while you're doing it. That's the main thing. Haven't made a video for the Cuda in a while, so I thought I'd show you the updates, kind of what's going on. I've been under there getting the rest of the frame rails out, not completely done, especially up at the front yet, but this is what I've been working on. Getting the drop-offs installed and making sure the trunk pan was where it needed to be. You can see sheet metal screws sticking up from the bottom of the top. Been all over with this thing, but I'm to the point that I'm happy with the placement of the trunk drop-offs and where the fender wells are and everything else. I ran into some pretty big problems over here on the driver's side. Everything fit fine, and as it came over to the passenger side, the trunk floor, if you had it connected back here at the pan, or at the tail pan, then it wouldn't connect up in the front. And that's because this car got hit from the back, and what ended up happening, what I finally figured out, is that this fender well was bent forward quite a bit. So I used a hydraulic ram, one of these Porta Power kits like you get from Home Depot or Harbor Freight, and pushed that back. And then the other problem was actually on the inside of the car. So we'll go look at that. And it had to do with the kick-up, the kick-up pan right there. And you can see where those cross braces are that I've drilled out the spot welds. So what happened is, like down in those very corners and down here, those were fairly well pushed forward, especially on this side. So that tail pan, or actually I guess I'll call it the kick-up pan. I don't know the real name for it, but you have to excuse me. What you do is, if you drill out all the spot wells inside the fender, the inner fender well on each side, so all the way back, drill out all those. You can see there's sheet metal screws, but they're all drilled out. So if you drill out all those on each side, and you drill out the stabilizer braces right there, you can bend that pan back if you needed to do that, or you could just replace the entire pan. I just didn't do that. I replaced the floorboards, the toe pans. I didn't replace the kick-up right there, and I just ended up bending it back to put it back in good shape. So it's coming along pretty good. I like the fit and finish of everything. The doors were going to require some work. Had my buddy over. The driver's side door is pretty good. You can see the gap on that one. It's not level back there, and the gaps are not good. So we'll have to work that. The gaps on the trunk lid are not great when you put it down, but they're decent. And you know, it's coming along. All this stuff takes time. It takes massaging. So the next thing will be to weld the trunk pan in, and the drop-offs, and get the fender wells back in right shape, get them all welded up, and then start, well, I'll probably go ahead and trial fit the frame rails before I do that, before I weld them. I'll leave them with the sheet metal screws, trial fit all those, and then once I'm sure that the frame rails are going to fit correctly, it's time to start probably weld the trunk floor in, the drop-offs, and the fender wells, and the frame rails, and then I'll have to blow the quarter panels back off of it, finish up the prep and repair of one of the C panels under there, and then do all the final welding to get the back half of the car back in good shape, and then we can go and start looking at suspension options and stuff like that. The final body work, all the gaps and everything will come a little bit later, but as long as we're close at this stage, I'm pretty happy. So there you go, the Cuda's coming.